The jaws closed around the dog's neck with surgical precision. Not biting, not yet, but holding, the way a mother cat carries a kitten, the way death gives its final warning before committing. The dog went rigid, every muscle locked in the terror of prey caught, every instinct screaming that this was the end. She could feel the heat of the lion's breath on her matted fur, could feel the points of his canines resting against her jugular, could smell the blood of 1,000 kills in the cavern of his mouth. Around them, the den was dark and cool and smelled of earth and predator, the last place any wild dog should ever be, the last place she would ever be. Then, the lion did something impossible. He lifted her, gently, impossibly gently, and carried her deeper into the den, past the threshold where light died completely, into the heart of his territory, where bones littered the floor, and the walls still held the warmth of his massive body. And he set her down, released her, stepped back. In the darkness, two pairs of eyes met, amber and brown, predator and hunted, hunted. The dog's legs trembled with the effort of not running, because running meant death, and staying might mean death, and everything meant death, except somehow, impossibly, she was still breathing. The lion sat, watched, waited for her to understand something that had no words. Wait, before the next revelation happens, if this bond between these creatures has already touched you, tell us where you're watching from. To witness every act of courage, every impossible friendship, and every silent miracle of nature, subscribe and join our circle. The next moment will change everything. Now, back to the wild. The lion caught a lone dog sneaking into his den. What happened next left the whole jungle in silence. Part 1. The Incident and the Proposition. 3 days earlier, the dog had been part of a pack. Not a large one, 7 adults, lean and scarred from the constant warfare of survival in territories that bordered the big cat's hunting grounds. They were African wild dogs, painted wolves, survivors by cooperation and speed, and the kind of desperate intelligence that came from being smaller than lions, weaker than hyenas, and hunted by both. The pack had been pursuing an impala when the lions appeared. 3 males, brothers probably, moving through the tall grass like shadows given form and muscle. The wild dogs scattered. They always scattered when lions came. But this time, the grass was too thick, the lions too close, the mathematics of escape all wrong. 2 dogs died in the first 30 seconds. The alpha male who'd turned to face the threat and bought his pack microseconds of flight. And the young male who'd stumbled, just once, just for a heartbeat, and learned that in the presence of lions, a heartbeat was all death needed. The dog, she'd been near the back of the pack, smaller than the others, always the last to eat, always the first to scout dangerous territory, because expendable members got dangerous jobs. Ran. She ran while her family died behind her, while the sounds of killing echoed across the savannah, while her legs burned and her lungs screamed and her heart hammered against ribs that showed too clearly through her skin. She ran until the sound stopped, until the grass gave way to acacia scrub, until her legs simply stopped obeying and she collapsed in the shade of a termite mound, sides heaving, alone for the first time in her life. Wild dogs didn't survive alone. Their strength was the pack, the coordinated hunting, the shared warmth on cold nights, the collective defense against the bigger predators. Alone, she was just meat that could run fast, but not fast enough. Not forever. She'd rested there until nightfall, then moved again, driven by instinct to put distance between herself and the kill site. She moved through territories she didn't know, following the scent of water, avoiding the strong scent markers of lions and hyenas and leopards. For 2 days, she'd survived on insects and a half-rotten guinea fowl she'd found abandoned by some other predator. It wasn't enough. She could feel herself weakening, feel the energy reserves burning down to nothing. Wild dogs needed meat, needed protein, needed regular kills that required a pack to bring down. On the 3rd day, starving and desperate, she caught the scent of a fresh kill. Lion kill. The scent was unmistakable, blood and torn flesh mixed with the musk of male lions, still strong, meaning they were probably still near. Every survival instinct she possessed said, run, hide, anywhere but here. But she was dying slowly anyway. Starvation was just death on an installment plan. She followed the scent through the acacia scrub, moving low and cautious, every sense straining for warning. The smell grew stronger. Not just kill, den. The lions had dragged their prey to a den site, the way males sometimes did when they were between prides, living rough and temporary. She found the entrance as the sun reached its apex. A dark opening in a tumble of rocks, sheltered by an overhang, the kind of place that would be cool in the day's heat. The scent of fresh meat rolled out of that darkness like an invitation written in blood. The dog circled the entrance 3 times, warring with herself. Lions killed wild dogs on sight. It wasn't even about food. It was about competition, about eliminating rivals, about the simple, brutal logic of apex predators who tolerated no challenges to their dominance. But the meat smell was so strong, and she was so hungry. And the lions might be sleeping in the day's heat, might not notice one small dog slipping in, taking a few scraps, disappearing before they woke. Might. She made her decision the way starving animals always do, by choosing the quick death over the slow one, the risk over the certainty. She slipped into the den. The darkness was total after the bright savanna sun. She paused just inside the entrance, letting her eyes adjust, her nose mapping the space. The kill was deeper in. She could smell it, could almost taste it. No sound except her own breathing and the distant buzz of flies deeper in the cave. She crept forward, paused silent on the packed earth floor. 5 feet, 10. The darkness thickened. The smell of lion grew overwhelming, marking this place as territory, as claimed, as forbidden to everything that wanted to keep breathing. 15 feet in, she could make out shapes. The carcass looked like a zebra, mostly eaten, but with meat still clinging to the ribs and haunches. Enough to feed her for days if she could. The growl came from behind her. Not ahead, where she'd been focused. Behind. Between her and the entrance, between her and escape. A growl so deep it felt like the earth itself was angry, so low it resonated in her bones before she consciously heard it. She spun, but even as she turned, she knew it was too late. The lion filled the entrance, blocking the light, blocking escape, blocking any reality where she survived the next 10 seconds. He was massive, 400 pounds easily, his mane full and dark, marking him as mature, experienced, dangerous in ways young lions weren't yet. His eyes caught what little light penetrated the den, reflecting it back as twin flames. He took a step forward, and another, moving with the casual confidence of something that had never lost a fight, never doubted its place at the top of the food chain. The dog dropped low, submitted automatically, showing her belly, showing her throat, the universal language of surrender. It wouldn't help. Lions didn't spare wild dogs, but instinct demanded she try every option before the teeth found her. The lion kept coming. Slow, deliberate. Death in no hurry, because death never had to hurry. He reached her, stood over her. She could see the scars on his muzzle now, the torn ear, the marks of battles won. Could see his ribs expanding and contracting with breath. could see the muscles bunching in his shoulders as he lowered his head toward her exposed throat. This was it, the end, the quick death she'd chosen over the slow one. His jaws opened, came down, closed around her neck, and held. The dog's mind went blank with terror and confusion. He wasn't biting down, wasn't shaking her, the way lions killed, the way her death should be happening. He was just holding her. The pressure was there, constant and undeniable, the threat clear, but he wasn't executing it. 10 seconds passed, 20. The dog barely breathed, afraid that any movement would trigger the killing bite. Then the lion lifted her. She felt her paws leave the ground, felt her whole body suspended by the neck grip, felt every instinct scream that this was wrong, wrong. But there was no pain, no puncturing, just the transportation, the carrying, the lion moving deeper into the den with her in his jaws like she weighed nothing. He set her down near the zebra carcass, released her, stepped back. The dog scrambled to her feet, pressing against the cave wall as far from the lion as the space allowed. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break her ribs. She was alive, impossibly, inexplicably alive. The lion had carried her to the food instead of killing her. The lion sat. His eyes never left her, but there was no hunting tension in his posture. He was just watching, waiting. The dog didn't understand, couldn't understand. This violated everything she knew about lions, about predation, about the order of things. The lion's eyes flicked to the carcass, then back to her. The gesture was clear. Eat. The dog stared at him. This had to be a trap. Had to be some game predators played with prey before the final kill. But the meat was right there, and she was starving, and if she was going to die anyway. She edged toward the carcass, never taking her eyes off the lion. He didn't move. She reached the zebra and tore off a small piece of meat, barely more than a mouthful, ready to bolt if he charged. He didn't charge, didn't move at all, except to shift his weight slightly, settling into a more comfortable position. The dog ate. One small bite, then another, then larger pieces as the hunger overrode the fear. The meat was rich and fresh, the first real food she'd had in days. She ate with the desperate speed of wild animals who never knew when the next meal would come. The lion watched. His expression, if lions could be said to have expressions, held something that wasn't quite patience, but wasn't aggression either. Something waiting, something measuring. When the dog's belly was distended and she couldn't eat another bite, she backed away from the carcass. The lion still hadn't moved. They regarded each other across the dim den, predator and prey, the mathematics of their relationship broken into pieces that didn't add up to anything that made sense. The dog's exhaustion hit her all at once. She'd been running on adrenaline and fear for 3 days, hadn't slept more than a few minutes at a time, had burned through reserves she didn't have. The full belly made it worse, her body interpreting food as safety, demanding rest, demanding she sleep now before the next crisis. Her eyes started to close. She forced them open. Couldn't sleep here, not with the lion watching, not with death waiting for her to lower her guard. But the lion still hadn't moved, was just sitting there, looking almost peaceful. His breathing had slowed, deepened. His eyes were half closed. The dog's eyes closed again, stayed closed longer this time. Her body was shutting down whether her mind agreed or not. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was the lion, still watching, still waiting, still inexplicably letting her live. She woke to darkness complete. For a moment of pure panic, she didn't know where she was. Then it all came back. The den, the lion, the impossible meal. the surrender to sleep that should have been surrender to death. She could hear breathing, not hers, deeper, slower, the rhythm of something much larger sleeping. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she could make out the lion's form. He'd moved while she slept, was now lying between her and the entrance, blocking it completely with his massive body. Trap. It was a trap after all. He'd fed her and let her sleep, so she'd be trapped in here when she woke, with no escape route, nowhere to run. But he was asleep, or seemed to be. His breathing was regular, undisturbed. And if this was a trap, why let her sleep for what felt like hours? Why not kill her while she was unconscious and vulnerable? The dog stood slowly, carefully, trying not to make sound. The lion's ear twitched, but he didn't wake. She edged toward the entrance, towards where his body blocked the way out. She'd have to climb over him, or wake him, somehow ask to be let out. Neither option ended well. She was 3 feet from him when his eyes opened. They looked at each other in the darkness. The dog froze, ready for the charge, the roar, the inevitable violence. The lion just looked at her. Then, deliberately, he stood and moved aside, clearing the path to the entrance. The invitation was clear. She could leave, could walk out into the night and never come back. The dog looked at the entrance, at freedom, at the savanna beyond, where she would be alone again, starving again, dying slowly again. Then she looked at the lion, at the creature that should have killed her, but hadn't, that had fed her instead, that had let her sleep in safety, that was now offering her the choice. The proposition hung in the air between them, unspoken but understood. Stay or go, trust or run, risk this impossible thing, or return to the certain slow death of a lone wild dog. The dog made her choice. She walked past the lion, deeper into the den, back toward the carcass and the spot where she'd slept. Lay down there, curling into a tight ball, making herself small and unthreatening. The lion watched her settle. Then he returned to his position near the entrance, lying down again, blocking it again, protecting it, protecting her, though she didn't fully understand that yet. In the darkness, 2 predators, one apex, one pack, slept in the same space. The world outside continued its ancient patterns of hunting and dying, chasing and fleeing. But in this den, for this night, something different had begun, something that had no name yet, no category, no precedent. Just a lion who hadn't killed, and a dog who hadn't run, and the strange, fragile thing growing between them in the darkness. Dawn came slowly to the den, filtering through the entrance in shades of gray that gradually brightened to gold. The dog woke first, instantly alert the way prey animals always woke, ready to run before consciousness fully returned. The lion was already awake, sitting at the entrance, silhouetted against the morning light, watching the savanna come alive with the sounds of birds and distant herbivores. He didn't turn when the dog stirred, but his ear rotated back, tracking her movement. The dog stood, stretched carefully, testing her body. The sleep had helped. The meat had helped more. She felt stronger than she had in days, though still weak by the standards of a healthy wild dog. She needed water, needed to move, to exercise muscles that had gone stiff during the night. She approached the entrance, cautiously. The lion still didn't turn, but his body language changed subtly. Awareness sharpening, attention shifting from outside to the dog moving behind him. She stopped just behind him, uncertain. In her pack, there had been clear hierarchies, clear rules about who could approach whom, who ate first, who slept where. But this wasn't her pack, and the lion wasn't pack at all. The rules that governed their interaction didn't exist yet. The lion stood and walked out of the den, paused 10 feet beyond the entrance, and looked back at her. The invitation was clear again. Follow. The dog followed. The lion led her through the acacia scrub, moving at an easy walk that she could match without difficulty. He seemed to have a destination, moving with purpose rather than wandering. Other animals saw them and reacted with confusion. A warthog that had been rooting in the dirt froze mid-snuffle, trying to process the sight of a lion walking peacefully beside a wild dog. A group of impala bounded away, but their alarm calls held a questioning note, uncertain whether this strange pair constituted a threat. After 20 minutes, the dog smelled water. They emerged from the scrub into a clearing where a small waterhole reflected the morning sky. Several zebras were drinking at the far side. They saw the lion and retreated immediately, splashing through the shallows to put distance between themselves and danger. The lion walked to the water's edge and drank. The dog hung back, watching. In her pack, there had been an order to drinking. Alpha first, then down the hierarchy. She didn't know what the order was here, or if there was one. The lion finished drinking and moved aside, looked at her, waited. The dog approached the water and drank. It was fresh and cool, the first good water she'd had since leaving her pack. She drank until her belly sloshed, storing hydration against future scarcity. When she finished, the lion was lying in the shade of an acacia, watching her. She approached cautiously and lay down about 10 feet away, maintaining distance, maintaining the space that felt safe. The lion's eyes followed a bird moving through the branches above. The dog watched him watching it, trying to understand this creature who'd broken every rule she knew. Lions killed wild dogs. That was law, was nature, was the way things worked. Yet here she was, alive and fed and hydrated, lying in the shade with a creature who should be her death. A sound from the scrub made both their heads turn. Another lion, this one younger, leaner, his mane just starting to darken. He emerged into the clearing, saw the older lion, and his whole body language changed. Submission, deference. This was the dynamic the dog understood. Dominant and subordinate, hierarchy, established through force or threat of force. Then the young lion saw her. His eyes widened, his body tensed, muscles coiling for the charge, for the kill that was instinct and duty for a lion encountering a wild dog. The older lion stood, moved between them. Didn't roar, didn't charge, just positioned himself as a wall, a barrier, a statement that was clear even without vocalization. No, this one is protected. The young lion stopped, stared at the older one with obvious confusion. His eyes kept flicking to the dog, to the easy kill he was being denied, back to the older lion who was denying it. The older lion rumbled, a sound the dog was learning meant many things, depending on context, but here clearly meant warning, boundary, back down. The young lion circled once, agitated, confused, but ultimately submitted. He was bigger and younger, probably stronger in a direct fight, but the older lion carried himself with the authority of experience, of battles won, of dominance established through more than just physical strength. The young lion left, casting one more confused glance at the dog before disappearing into the scrub. The older lion returned to his spot in the shade, lay down, closed his eyes as if nothing had happened. The dog's heart was hammering. She'd just watched a lion defend her from another lion, had watched the natural order bend itself into shapes it was never meant to hold. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. The lion would wake at dawn, leave the den to patrol his territory. The dog would follow or not follow. He never forced her, never demanded, just made his movements clear and let her choose. Most mornings, she followed. It felt safer than staying alone in the den, safer than wandering the territory without knowing where the boundaries were, where the dangers hid. He taught her his territory without seeming to teach. She learned by following, by watching where he marked, where he avoided, where he moved with confidence, and where he moved with caution. The territory was large, maybe 4 square miles of scrub and grassland and 2 waterholes. He shared it loosely with 2 other males, the young one she'd seen, and another older male with a limp and a half-missing tail. Both other lions reacted to the dog with the same confusion and aggression, and both times the older lion intervened, established that she was under his protection, part of his territory, not to be touched. The message took time to sink in, but lions were intelligent. They learned. The dog learned too. Learned that the lion hunted at dusk and dawn, using the low light to stalk prey. Learned that he was patient, would wait hours for the perfect moment. Learned that when he made a kill, he would eat first. Hierarchy mattered, even in this strange alliance, but that he would always leave enough for her. She started helping with the hunts, though not intentionally at first. Wild dogs hunted by chasing prey to exhaustion, using stamina and coordination. Lions hunted by ambush, using power and explosive speed. The 2 methods shouldn't complement each other. But one evening when the lion was stalking a small group of impala, the dog's presence downwind of the prey made them nervous. They knew a wild dog's scent, knew it meant predators, knew to be alert. Their attention focused on her, on the obvious danger, while the lion circled around from the other side, unseen, unscented. He brought down a young male impala, the kill clean and quick. And when he fed, he looked at the dog with what might have been approval, might have been recognition that she'd contributed, even accidentally. She started doing it deliberately after that, positioning herself to draw attention, to make prey nervous, to push them in directions they wouldn't otherwise go. She was too small, too weak to hunt alone anymore, but she could be the distraction, the secondary threat that made the primary threat more effective. Their success rate improved. Food became regular instead of sporadic. The dog gained weight, her ribs disappearing under healthy muscle and coat. The lion, well-fed and unstressed, spent more time resting, more time in behaviors that seemed almost playful. Stalking birds, batting at insects, engaging with the world in ways beyond simple survival. But not everything was peaceful. Hyenas were the constant threat. They operated in clans, 20 or 30 strong, and they would steal kills from lone lions when they could. The dog's presence confused them even more than it confused the other lions. Wild dogs and hyenas were competitors, enemies, had been for thousands of years. Yet here was a wild dog living with a lion, protected by a lion. The first time a hyena clan approached one of their kills, the dog retreated immediately. Knew her place in the hierarchy of force. A clan of hyenas could kill a lone lion if they coordinated, could definitely kill a lone wild dog without breaking stride. But the lion didn't retreat. He stood over the kill and roared, the sound rolling across the savanna like thunder, claiming ownership, defying challenge. The hyena circled, laughing their unsettling calls, testing his resolve. They might have charged if it had been just the kill, but the dog's presence changed the mathematics. A lion defending a kill was predictable. A lion defending a kill and a wild dog was unpredictable. Unpredictable meant dangerous in ways that couldn't be calculated. The hyenas left, moved on to easier opportunities. The dog watched this with growing understanding. The lion wasn't just protecting her from immediate threats. He was protecting their partnership, this strange alliance that benefited them both. She brought him better hunts. He brought her protection and access to kills she could never make alone. It was mutualism, the biologists would have called it, except it was more than that. There was choice here, not just instinct. The lion could have killed her that first day, could have driven her off instead of defending her, could have treated her as tool instead of, what, companion? Pack? Pride? One evening, after a successful hunt, the dog did something she'd never done. She approached the lion where he lay grooming himself, belly full, relaxed in the last light. She'd always maintained distance, always respected the space that felt safe. This time, she lay down beside him, not touching, but close, closer than prey should ever be to predator. The lion paused mid-lick, looked at her. She met his eyes, held his gaze without submission or challenge, just acknowledgement. You saved me, you fed me, you protected me. I'm here by choice now, not just by desperation. The lion's rough tongue came out and groomed the top of her head in one long stroke. She tensed but didn't pull away. His saliva soaked her fur, carrying his scent, marking her the way lions marked pride members. When he settled back into grooming himself, the dog stayed, closed her eyes. Felt safer than she had since her pack died. Maybe safer than she'd ever felt. That night, storms rolled across the savannah. Lightning split the sky, and thunder boomed close enough to feel in the chest. Rain came in sheets, turning the ground to mud, flooding the waterhole, soaking everything. The dog huddled in the back of the den, instinctively seeking shelter. Wild dogs didn't like storms. They disrupted scent trails, made hunting impossible, brought cold that soaked through even thick fur. The lion entered the den, water streaming from his mane, and shook himself vigorously. Droplets flew everywhere, splattering the walls, the floor, the dog. Then he lay down at the entrance again, his usual position. The dog watched him from the back of the den. He'd given up his dry spot to patrol the territory in the storm, was now lying in the wettest part of the den while she occupied the dry rear. She stood and walked to him, lay down against his side, sharing warmth, sharing space. His wet fur was cold at first, but underneath, the heat of his body radiated like a furnace. He was so much larger that she could press her entire back against his flank and barely cover a quarter of his length. The lion's tail came around, draping over her loosely, not restraining, just acknowledging, present, together. They slept like that while the storm raged, predator and prey generating a warmth between them that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with trust earned in small moments over careful days. When the dog dreamed, she dreamed of running with her old pack. But when she woke, pressed against the lion's side, listening to his heartbeat through his ribs, she didn't feel the old grief as sharply. The pack was gone. The family she'd known was dead. But she was building something new, something that had no name in the language of wild dogs or lions. Something that existed in the space between species, in the choice to protect instead of kill, to share instead of compete. The mathematics still didn't make sense, but they were alive, and they were fed, and they were warm. Sometimes that was all the sense the world needed to make. Part 3. The Revelation and the Fracture. The change came with the dry season. The water holes began to shrink, their edges pulling back from the mud to reveal cracked earth and the bones of animals who hadn't found water in time. The grass turned brown and brittle. The herds started moving, following ancient paths toward the distant river systems, leaving the territory emptier of prey. The lion and dog adapted, hunted more frequently to compensate for smaller, younger prey, ranged wider, sometimes traveling to the very edges of the lion's territory, where other prides bordered and the margins of power were always contested. 3 weeks into the dry season, they were hunting near the eastern boundary, when the dog caught a scent that stopped her mid-stride. Her whole body went rigid. Her ears came forward, then back, then forward again. Every muscle tensed with recognition and confusion, and something deeper, the pull of pack, the call of her own kind. Wild dogs, close, maybe a mile downwind. The lion noticed her reaction, watched her body language shift, watched the conflict play across her posture. He'd never seen her like this, torn, uncertain, half-crouched, as if ready to run but not running. The dog looked at him, then at the direction the scent came from, then back at him. The question was clear even without words. Can I go? Should I go? What am I to you? Pride or prisoner? The lion sat, didn't move to stop her, didn't vocalize, just watched with those amber eyes that had seen her terrified and starving in his den, had watched her grow healthy and confident, had witnessed her transformation from desperate refugee to hunting partner. The dog made her decision. She ran toward the scent. She found them in a small valley where a seasonal stream had left pools of water trapped in the rocks. 7 wild dogs, a small pack, similar in size to the one Shed lost. They saw her coming and immediately went on alert, spreading into defensive formation, ready to drive off an intruder or fight if necessary. The dog slowed, dropped into submission postures. The language of her species, unused for months but still written in her bones. She approached with head low, tail tucked, showing she meant no challenge, no threat. The alpha growled, a large female with a torn ear and intelligent eyes, watched her approach, scented her. The female's nose wrinkled, confusion evident. The dog smelled wrong, not just unfamiliar pack, but fundamentally wrong. She smelled of lion. The alpha growled a question. The other dogs circled, tense, trying to understand what they were smelling, what they were seeing. A wild dog, clearly alone, clearly seeking pack, but carrying the scent of their greatest enemy. The dog tried to explain, in the only language she had, body language, submission, the postures that said, "In pack, I belong, please." But she'd been living with a lion, had forgotten some of the subtle signals, moved with more confidence than a true Omega should have, held eye contact a fraction too long. Small things, but pack animals noticed small things. The alpha approached, sniffing thoroughly. The lion scent was all over her, in her fur, on her breath, marking her as fundamentally other. The alpha's hackles rose. This wasn't a lost pack member. This was something wrong, something that violated the natural boundaries between species. The alpha attacked, not to kill, not yet, but to drive off, to establish that this strange, wrong-smelling dog wasn't welcome. The other pack members joined in, harrying her, snapping at her flanks, forcing her back. The dog retreated, tried again to submit, to explain. But there was no explaining the smell of lion to wild dogs, no making them understand the impossible alliance, the trust built in darkness and hunger and shared kills. They drove her away, chased her half a mile, making sure she understood she wasn't pack, wasn't welcome, wasn't anything they wanted in their territory. When they finally stopped chasing, the dog stood in the open savanna, sides heaving, bleeding from a dozen small bites. Not seriously injured, but marked, rejected. She'd thought finding her species would mean finding home, would mean belonging again, but she'd changed too much, smelled too much of lion, acted too much like something that lived with apex predators instead of running from them. She couldn't go back to being wild dog. The pack had made that clear. She turned and headed back toward the lion's territory, toward the den, toward the only home she had left. She found the lion where she'd left him, still sitting, still waiting. He watched her approach, saw the blood, the defeated posture, the grief in her eyes. He stood and walked to her, sniffed her wounds, rumbled deep in his chest. Then he groomed her, licked the bites clean with his rough tongue, the gesture careful despite its size. cleaning her, caring for her, reaffirming that whatever the pack had decided, here she was still valued. The dog pressed against him, and something broke inside her. The grief she'd been carrying since her original pack died, the hope that she could find her kind again, the desperate wish that she could belong somewhere, all of it crashed through her at once. She made sounds wild dogs rarely made, whines and whimpers that expressed the loss that had no words. The lion lay down beside her and let her press against his side while she processed the fracture, the final severing of her old life. But the incident changed something else too, changed how the other lions viewed her. The young lion, the one who'd wanted to kill her that first week, had watched her run toward the wild dog pack, had followed at a distance, curious, had seen the pack reject her, attack her, drive her off. When he returned to his territory, he told the other males. Lions didn't have language the way humans did, but they communicated. Through scent, through posture, through the complex social signals that governed pride dynamics. The message spread. The dog had tried to return to her kind and been rejected. She wasn't wild dog anymore, wasn't lion either, was something else, something without category, something that existed only through the older lion's protection. The young lion saw opportunity in that. The older lion was strong but getting older. His reflexes were slowing. His hunts were less successful than they used to be. And he was spending resources, time, energy, protection, on a dog that contributed less to his survival than she took. The mathematics of dominance were always running in the background of lion interactions. Males lived in coalitions of necessity, but those coalitions were hierarchies waiting to shift, power structures looking for cracks. The young lion decided to test the hierarchy. It happened 3 days after the wild dog pack incident. The older lion had made a kill, a young warthog, not large but sufficient. The dog was feeding on the scraps as she always did, taking what the lion left, staying in her place in the hierarchy. The young lion approached, not submissively, walking straight toward the kill with his head up, his eyes locked on the older lion, challenge written in every line of his body. The older lion stood over the kill and rumbled a warning. The dog retreated immediately, recognizing the signs of male conflict, wanting no part of it. The young lion kept coming, rumbled back. His message was clear. I'm stronger. I should eat first. I should lead. And I shouldn't have to share my territory with a dog. The older lion roared. The sound rolled across the savanna, claiming dominance, rejecting challenge. He charged. The young lion met him, 400 pounds of muscle and bone and claw colliding in a fury of violence. They grappled, bit, raked with claws, each trying to establish submission, to force the other down. The dog watched from the scrub, frozen. This was lion business, lion hierarchy. She had no place in it, no way to influence it. Could only watch while the creature who'd protected her fought to maintain his right to protecting her. The fight was brutal and short. The young lion was stronger, faster, but the older lion had experience, had fought more battles, knew how to use his weight and positioning. He got his jaws around the young lion's throat, not killing, not yet, just the submission hold that demanded surrender. The young lion submitted, went limp, acknowledged defeat. The older lion released him and stepped back. The young lion slunk away, defeated but not destroyed. He'd challenged and lost. He'd try again someday when the older lion was weaker, when the mathematics tipped in his favor. The older lion stood over his kill, sides heaving, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. He'd won, but barely. The effort had cost him. The dog approached cautiously. The lion's eyes tracked her, and for a moment she saw something in them she hadn't seen before. Doubt. The awareness that protecting her came at a cost. that maintaining this impossible alliance meant fighting not just for food and territory, but against his own kind. He'd won today, but the fights would keep coming, and someday he'd lose. The dog understood this with sudden clarity. She'd become a liability, a reason for other males to challenge him, to test his authority, to push him toward the day when he'd be too old or too injured to defend his territory. She was killing him slowly, not through malice, but through simple existence. That night, in the den, the dog made her decision. She would leave. Not to find another pack, that door was closed forever, but to remove herself from the equation, to stop being the reason the lion had to fight. She waited until he slept, then crept toward the entrance. Paused there, looking back at the massive form barely visible in the darkness, the creature who'd saved her when he should have killed her, who'd fed her and protected her and made space in his life for something that made no biological sense. She took a step toward freedom, toward removing the burden she'd become. The lion's eyes opened. He stood, walked to her, positioned himself between her and the exit. Not aggressively, just there, blocking the path. The dog looked up at him, tried to make him understand through body language, through posture. "I'm hurting you. I'm making your life harder. Let me go." The lion rumbled, lowered his head and touched his nose to hers. The gesture was clear. "No, you stay. We're pride." The dog's eyes reflected what little light penetrated the den. Predator and prey, staring at each other in the darkness, both knowing that this alliance was unsustainable, both choosing it anyway. The lion lay down at the entrance again, claimed his spot, made his decision. The dog returned to the back of the den and curled up, but she didn't sleep, just listened to the lion's breathing, to the sounds of the savannah outside, to the future creeping closer with every sunset. Someday, the young lion would challenge again. Someday, the older lion would lose. And when that happened, the protection would end, and she would be just a wild dog again, alone, vulnerable, prey. But not tonight. Tonight, she was still protected, still pride, still part of something that shouldn't exist, but did anyway, stubbornly, impossibly, against all logic and nature. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about the day when the mathematics would finally catch up with them. When mercy would run out of strength to sustain it. Part 4. The Return and the Trial. The older lion's injuries from the fight took 3 weeks to heal. Deep puncture wounds in his shoulder where the young lion's canines had found purchase. A torn ear that would never quite look right again. A limp that persisted for days before gradually fading. During that time, he couldn't hunt as effectively, couldn't move with his usual power and speed. The dog compensated where she could, driving smaller prey toward him, finding carrion, even catching a guinea fowl once through luck and persistence. But it wasn't enough. The lion lost weight, his ribs began to show. The dog watched him weaken and felt the guilt eating at her. This was her fault. He was starving because he'd fought for her, because he'd defended something that nature said didn't deserve defending. On the 22nd day after the fight, they were resting in the shade when the scent reached them. Lionesses, multiple females, moving through the territory with the confidence of a pride that knew its strength. The lion stood, instantly alert despite his weakened state. The dog stood too, reading his body language, understanding that whatever was coming was significant. 6 lionesses emerged from the scrub. They moved as a coordinated unit, spreading into a loose arc, their eyes assessing the male, the territory, the resources. This was a pride without males. Their previous coalition had either died or been driven off, leaving them vulnerable, seeking new protection. They saw the lion and approached cautiously. He was scarred, obviously weakened, not the impressive specimen they'd hoped for. But he held territory, had scent markers establishing boundaries, represented the protection they needed for their cubs. Then they saw the dog. The lead lioness, older, heavily scarred, clearly the dominant female, stopped mid-stride. Her eyes narrowed. The other females fanned out, uncertain, trying to process what they were seeing. A wild dog, living with a male lion, the smell of him all over her, the body language between them suggesting not predator-prey, but something else, something that violated every instinct about how prides worked. The lead lioness approached the male, rumbled a question. The sounds they exchanged weren't words, but meaning was clear enough. What is this? Why is prey living in your territory? Why haven't you killed it? The male positioned himself between the lionesses and the dog. His response was firm. She's mine. She stays. The lionesses conferred among themselves. Their body language showed confusion, disagreement, debate. A pride was family, was cooperation, was lionesses raising cubs together while males provided protection. A pride was not this, not a lion and a dog pretending to be pride. The lead lioness made her decision. She approached the male again, her posture shifting to something more affiliative, more inviting. She rubbed against him, marking him with her scent, the gesture that initiated pride bonding. The message was clear. Join with us, be our male, but the dog has to go. The other lionesses moved closer, forming a circle that excluded the dog, that made her alien to this new potential family structure. The dog understood. This was the choice, her or them. Reject this chance at a real pride, at healthy lionesses and future cubs and the natural order restored. Or accept them and abandon her. The older lion looked at the lionesses, 6 strong females, the promise of cubs, the coalition that was supposed to be his biological imperative, his evolutionary purpose. Everything a male lion was designed to want. Then he looked at the dog. Small, scarred, wrong species, impossible. The creature that had made him fight his coalition partner, that had made him weaker, not stronger, that gave him nothing a lion was supposed to value. He turned back to the lionesses and roared. Not the bonding call, but the warning. The sound that meant no, leave. This territory is claimed and its boundaries include her. The lead lioness's eyes widened. She'd offered him everything, pride, family, the natural order, and he'd refused for a dog. She tried once more, approached again, using every signal in the lioness vocabulary of attraction and acceptance. Her body language promised strength, protection, family, everything. The older lion stood firm, positioned himself clearly with the dog, his choice made. The lionesses left, moved off into the scrub, their body language showing confusion and dismissal. They'd find another male, one who understood the proper order of things, one who didn't waste his protection on prey. When they were gone, the dog approached the lion, looked up at him with eyes that held questions she couldn't voice. Why? Why choose me over them? Why doom yourself to a pride of one? The lion groomed her head once, roughly, almost impatiently. They turned and walked back toward the den. The conversation was over. The choice was made. They would continue as they had been, impossible, illogical, alive. But the encounter changed things for the dog. She'd watched him refuse his biological imperative, refuse the natural order, refuse everything he was supposed to want for her. The debt between them shifted again. This wasn't rescue anymore, wasn't even mutual benefit. This was choice, pure and deliberate. He'd chosen her over his own species' future, had chosen this strange alliance over the promise of cubs and legacy and the continuation of his genes. She'd given him nothing worth that sacrifice. She was just a wild dog, half the size she should be, carrying scars and trauma and providing minimal help with hunts. Yet he'd chosen her anyway. The weight of that choice pressed on her in ways she couldn't articulate, made her more alert, more dedicated to helping with hunts. Made her brave in ways wild dogs weren't supposed to be brave. 2 days later, they were tracking a young impala when they encountered a leopard on the same hunt. Leopards and lions didn't get along, competitors for resources, each capable of killing the other's cubs, each maintaining wary distance. This leopard was female, lean and hungry from the dry season. She saw the impala and saw the lion and did her own mathematics. A weakened male, distracted by a dog, ribs showing from his recent fight. Worth the risk of stealing his kill if she was fast enough. The impala bolted. The lion gave chase, but his injured shoulder slowed him. The impala was pulling away. The hunt was failing. The dog made a decision. She cut left, away from the lion, running parallel to the impala, drawing the leopard's attention, making herself the easier target, the more logical prey. The leopard saw her and changed direction, abandoning the impala for the certain kill. Leopards killed wild dogs regularly. It was barely even hunting, just opportunistic predation. The dog ran flat out, not toward safety, but toward the rocky outcropping scouted weeks ago. Terrain that would give her an advantage, spaces too small for a leopard to follow. She reached the rocks with the leopard 10 feet behind her, dove into a crevice barely wide enough for her body. The leopard's claws scraped the rock inches from her tail. The leopard circled the outcropping, trying to find another entrance, another angle. The dog could hear her, could smell her, could feel the vibration of her paws on the stone above. Then a roar split the air. The lion, abandoning the impala, coming for the leopard, coming for the dog. The leopard was fast and smart, knew she couldn't fight a male lion, even a weakened one. She fled, disappearing into the rocks with the speed her species was famous for. The lion reached the outcropping and rumbled, the call that meant, "Safe, come out." The dog emerged cautiously. The lion sniffed her thoroughly, checking for injuries, his concern evident. They'd lost the impala, the hunt had failed, but the dog was alive, and that seemed to matter more to him than food. They returned to the den empty-bellied. The dog could see the lion's ribs more clearly than ever, could see the way the wounds from the fight still pulled at his movements. He was dying slowly, not from the fight itself, but from the mathematics of everything that had come after. Fighting alone when he should have a coalition, hunting alone when he should have a pride, choosing a dog over lionesses who could have given him cubs and legacy. The dog lay beside him that night, pressed against his side, feeling his heartbeat through his ribs. She was killing him. Her presence, her need for protection, her very existence in his life was draining him of the resources she needed to survive. But when she tried to move away, to give him more space, his tail came around and pinned her gently, held her there, refused to let her distance herself. They slept like that, predator and prey, dying a little more each day, but refusing to separate. The mathematics said this couldn't last. Biology said this couldn't last. Everything rational said this couldn't last. But they'd stopped listening to rational a long time ago, somewhere around the moment the lion had carried the dog to his kill instead of killing her, somewhere in the nights spent sharing warmth, somewhere in the choice to be impossible together rather than logical apart. The next morning brought crisis. The young lion returned, but not alone. He'd brought 2 others, males from a neighboring territory, brothers, forming a new coalition. 3 against 1, the kind of numbers that ended with territory claimed and the previous male driven off or killed. They found the older lion at the waterhole. The dog saw them coming first, caught their scent on the wind, stamped a warning. The older lion turned and saw them. Saw the numbers, saw the mathematics of his own defeat written in muscle and youth and coordinated strength. He could run, leave the territory, become a nomad, wander until he found unclaimed land or died trying. That's what lone males did when coalitions overwhelmed them. But running meant abandoning the dog, leaving her without protection in a territory that would be claimed by males who'd already shown they wanted her dead. The older lion stood his ground, positioned himself between the dog and the approaching coalition. His roar echoed across the savannah, not a challenge he could win, but a refusal to surrender. A statement that this territory, this protection, this impossible thing he'd built with a wild dog was worth dying for. The dog watched the 3 males approach, watched the older lion brace himself for a fight he couldn't win, watched her protector choose death over abandoning her, and made her own choice. She ran, not away, toward the approaching coalition, barking the alarm calls wild dogs used to signal danger, to warn pack, to coordinate defense. But she had no pack, just a lion who couldn't understand her language but understood her intent. She was creating a distraction, drawing attention, giving him a chance to run, to escape, to choose survival over heroic stupidity. The young lion broke from the coalition and charged her. Finally had his chance to kill the thing that had disrupted the natural order, that had made the older lion weak. The dog ran, used every trick her species had learned over millennia of being smaller, being hunted, being prey. She dodged, doubled back, used the terrain, made herself impossible to pin down. But she was tiring, and the young lion was learning her patterns, getting closer with each attempt. Then the older lion hit him. The impact sent both males tumbling through the dirt in a tangle of claws and teeth and rage. The older lion was fighting not for territory now, but for something smaller, something that made no biological sense. Fighting for a dog who'd tried to save him by becoming bait. The other 2 males circled, looking for an opening to join the fight. But the older lion and the young one were moving too fast, grappling too close. Friendly fire was a real risk. The dog saw her chance, saw the 2 circling males focused on the fight. She ran between them, barking, snapping at their heels, not trying to hurt them, just to confuse, to disorient, to break their focus. It worked for 30 seconds. Then one of them turned and swatted at her, claws extended. The blow caught her across the ribs, sent her rolling through the dirt. Pain exploded through her side. She tried to stand and couldn't. Something was broken. Several somethings. Through vision blurring with shock, she saw the older lion break from the young one and charge the male who'd hit her. Saw him tackle the bigger lion with the last of his strength, buying her seconds, buying her time. The dog dragged herself toward the rocks, toward shelter, toward anything that wasn't the open ground where 3 lions were trying to kill the one lion who'd ever protected her. She made it to a crevice, pulled herself inside, turned to watch. The older lion was losing, fighting 1 on 3, weakened, injured. He'd gotten the young lion's throat once, but not fatally. Had bloodied all 3 of them, but they were wearing him down, and everyone watching knew how this would end. The dog tried to bark, to call him to her, to tell him to run now, to save himself. But her ribs were broken, and breathing hurt, and the sound came out as a wheeze that carried nowhere. The older lion went down under the weight of all 3. The dog heard his roar of defiance turn to a roar of pain. saw the three males standing over him, establishing dominance, claiming territory, ending the resistance. Then they looked toward the rocks, toward where the dog was hidden. They'd won. The territory was theirs. Now to eliminate the aberration, the thing that should never have been protected in the first place. The young lion approached the crevice. His muzzle was bloody from the fight, his eyes hard with the certainty of his right to kill. He reached the entrance and looked in at the dog, broken and bleeding and unable to run. Behind him, the older lion moved. Shouldn't have been able to move, should have stayed down. But he stood somehow, on legs that shook and barely held his weight. Stood and charged one more time. He hit the young lion from behind, knocked him away from the crevice. Used the last of his strength not to fight, but to position himself once more between the dog and danger. Between the thing he'd protected and the world that wanted her dead. The three males stood over him again. This time he didn't get up. Just lay there, breathing in wet, labored gasps. Watching them with eyes that held no submission, no surrender. Just the steady gaze of something that had made its choice and was content to die with it. The young lion raised his paw for the killing strike. The moment drew out, suspended, the whole savanna seeming to hold its breath. Then from the crevice a sound. The dog whimpering. Not in pain, but in grief. The sound of pack mourning, of wild dogs who'd lost family. A sound that reached across species, because loss was universal, because grief spoke a language older than words. The young lion hesitated, looked at the dog, at the older lion who'd fought 3-on-1 for something that wasn't his species, wasn't his pride, wasn't anything the natural order recognized. Looked at the sheer stubborn impossibility of it all. His paw lowered. He stepped back. The other two males looked at him, confused. This was the moment to kill, to eliminate competition, to claim total victory. But the young lion shook his head. Turned away from the older lion, from the dog, from the whole impossible situation. The three males left, claimed the territory, but left its previous occupants alive, bleeding but breathing. Because sometimes even apex predators recognized something that transcended the usual mathematics. Sometimes mercy won. Just barely, just for a moment. The older lion lay in the dirt, too broken to move. The dog dragged herself from the crevice, every movement agony, crawled to him, pressed her body against his, sharing what warmth she had left, keeping vigil the way pack animals do when family is dying. They lay like that as the sun moved across the sky. Two predators who'd broken every rule, paid every price, and somehow, impossibly, were still breathing. Still together. Still refusing to make sense. Part 5. The Resolution and Renewal. The healing took months. The older lion couldn't hunt, could barely walk for the first 3 weeks. The dog's ribs mended slowly, each breath painful for longer than she wanted to count. They survived on carrion and what little water collected in the rocks near what had been the lion's territory, but was territory no longer. The young lion and his coalition had claimed it, but they never ventured to the small rocky area where the older lion and the dog had made their final stand. Some invisible boundary had been established that day. Some understanding that this small corner of the world operated under different rules. The dog recovered faster. She was smaller. Her bones healed quicker. As soon as she could run, she hunted. Not large prey. She didn't have the strength or the teeth for that. But lizards, small birds, once a young hare, too slow to escape. She brought everything back to the lion, laid it beside him. Tiny offerings that couldn't begin to sustain his mass, but that kept him from starving entirely. She also found a way to supplement humans. There was a research station at the edge of what had been the lion's territory. Scientists studying savanna ecology, their camp generating waste, food waste. The dog learned their patterns, learned when they'd throw out scraps, learned to sneak in at dawn before the scavengers arrived. She brought back things the lion had never tasted. Bread, bones with cooked meat still clinging. Once, impossibly, half a chicken. The lion ate what she brought without question, too weak to hunt, too broken to have pride about the source. And slowly, impossibly, he healed. His wounds closed, his strength returned. Not to what it had been, he'd never be that strong again, but to something functional, something that could walk, could defend if necessary, could survive. When he could finally hunt again, it was small prey. A young gazelle separated from its mother, a warthog piglet. Nothing like the kills he'd made in his prime, but enough, combined with what the dog brought from the humans and what they scavenged, to keep them fed. They developed a new pattern. The dog would scout, would find wounded animals or young prey separated from protection, would lead the lion to them. He would make the kill with whatever remained of his power. They would share it, this partnership of broken predators who'd given up everything for each other and were learning to survive anyway. 6 months after the fight, they encountered the lionesses again. The same pride that had offered the older lion a chance at family, at legacy, at normal. They'd found new males, 2 young brothers, strong and unscarred, everything a pride should want. The lionesses had cubs now, small, playful, tumbling over each other in the shade while their mothers watched with fierce protective attention. The future, guaranteed and proper, and following all the right rules. The lead lioness saw the older lion and the dog. Her eyes tracked their movements, saw how the dog scouted ahead and the lion followed. Saw how they worked together, this mismatched pair that had refused her offer of normalcy. She looked at her cubs, then at the dog. Something passed across her expression. Not quite approval, but perhaps understanding. Perhaps recognition that there were different ways to survive, different definitions of family. She led her pride away without aggression, without conflict. They had their way. The older lion and the dog had theirs. The savanna was large enough for both. The dog watched the cubs disappear into the grass and felt an ache that had no name. She would never have cubs. Her species and the lion's couldn't produce offspring. This alliance produced no legacy, no genetic future, nothing that would outlive them. But when she looked at the lion, scarred and limping but alive, she felt something that transcended biology. They'd built something together, not cubs, but trust, not legacy, but choice. They'd rewritten the rules and survived the rewriting. That was its own kind of future. As the dry season gave way to the short rains, life returned to the savanna. The water holes filled, the grass greened. The herds returned, and with them, easier hunting. The dog and lion settled into their new territory, smaller than what the lion had held before, but safer, away from the coalitions and pride politics, a corner of the world where an impossible alliance could exist without constant challenge. They hunted in the cool of morning and evening, rested during the heat of the day. The dog pressed against the lion's flank, sharing shade and warmth and the companionable silence of beings who'd learned each other's languages without words. Sometimes other animals would see them and stop, confused by the sight. A lion and a wild dog lying peacefully side by side, grooming each other, moving through the world as a coordinated unit. The young ones, the gazelles and zebras born that year, didn't know it was impossible. To them, it was just how things were. A lion and a dog who hunted together, who protected each other, who existed in partnership. The older animals knew better, knew this violated every law of nature they'd been taught. But they also knew the pair had survived coalition challenges, had survived rejection from their own species, had survived injuries that should have killed them, had survived by refusing to make sense. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber that matched the lion's eyes, the dog sat beside him on a small rise overlooking their territory. It wasn't much, a few square miles, 2 waterholes, enough prey to keep them fed, nothing like what the lion had held in his prime. But it was theirs, built not on birthright or strength, but on choice, on the decision made daily to protect each other against a world that said they shouldn't. The lion rumbled. That sound the dog had learned meant contentment, meant safety, meant family. She pressed closer to him, feeling his heartbeat through his ribs, steady and strong despite everything those ribs had been through. In the distance, a pack of wild dogs called to each other, coordinating a hunt. The dog's ears pricked forward, instinct pulling at her. That was her species, her kind, calling in the language she was born to understand. But she didn't answer, didn't run to join them. Her pack was here, beside her. 1 member instead of 7, wrong species, impossible by every measure. But hers. The lion's tail draped over her loosely, the gesture casual now, familiar. They watched the sunset together, 2 apex predators who'd learned that survival came in forms biology textbooks couldn't account for. The young lion and his coalition prospered in the main territory. The lionesses raised their cubs successfully. The wild dog pack coordinated their hunts and brought down prey through teamwork and stamina. And on the edge of it all, in a small territory that barely showed on any map, a lion and a dog survived through partnership, through trust built in the darkness of a den where death had been offered and refused, through choices made against all instinct and logic. They would grow old together, these impossible companions, would hunt smaller prey each year as their strength faded, would watch the world change around them while their alliance remained constant. When the dog eventually died, wild dogs lived fast and brief, even well-fed ones. The lion would mourn in ways his species had no framework for, would keep vigil beside her body for days, would never take another companion, never join a pride, never return to the natural order. And when the lion eventually died, years later, old and scarred but content, the savannah would remember, would pass down the story in the only way the wild could, through behavior witnessed and learned, through the young animals who'd seen them and carried the memory forward. The story of a lion who'd caught a wild dog sneaking into his den and made the choice that changed them both, that left the jungle, though this was savannah and the jungle was miles away, but the story traveled, in silence, in awe, in the recognition that sometimes, rarely, impossibly, mercy outweighed instinct, that family could be chosen, not just born into, that the mathematics of survival sometimes required faith in equations that didn't balance but worked anyway. The dog shifted against the lion's side, finding the comfortable spot she'd learned over months of shared rest. The lion's rumble deepened, vibrating through both their bodies. Above them, the first stars emerged. 2 predators, 1 apex and 1 pack, who'd learned that the wild's most important rule wasn't survival of the fittest. It was that sometimes the fittest survived by refusing to follow the rules at all, by making mercy stronger than instinct, by choosing each other daily against all logic, by proving that impossible was just another word for something that hadn't happened yet. They slept as the night deepened, predator and prey, the categories meaningless now. Just 2 beings who'd found each other in the darkness and refused to let go, no matter what the cost, no matter what the world said. The den was far behind them. The territory had changed. Their bodies bore scars from choices that had nearly killed them both. But they were alive, together, free. And the savannah, which had seen everything in its millions of years, made room for one more impossible thing, added it to the catalog of mysteries, the bond between creatures who shouldn't bond, the alliance that shouldn't work, the choice that defied every law of nature except the one that mattered most, the law that said, sometimes, love, whatever form it took, whatever species it crossed, was stronger than the rules written in blood and bone. Sometimes mercy won. Sometimes impossible lived. Always they were together.